I'll say we'll give it maybe a minute or two just to kind of go ahead and let anyone who's got to join joined. I want to thank you for taking the time out for doing this. I want to
Absolutely.
introduce myself. I am obviously Diego. I am the new VP at Lincoln Center, and I'm really excited
Congrats.
to have you here joining us for this and our veterans and our students. Yeah,
That's
so
awesome.
I don't want to hold you up. You go ahead and get started. We're recording this session, so anybody that does come in late has the opportunity to just review this at their own leisure.
Okay. That's awesome. And I see Matthew just joined. Hey, Matthew. I think we met before as well. Um, well, cool. I think part of the thing that I wanted to do was just talk about a little bit about who's in the room, provide some job hunting tips, also give you an update about Mathison's veteran hiring program, the company that I work with, and also, some job hunting resources. And then at the end of this, the goal is to have a bit of a mastermind session to, talk to veterans about like what their story is going to look like after they transition out of college. Because, I know military to college was already a huge transition. Now you're really jumping into the real world. So that's kind of how I thought about structuring the chat. But
Sounds good. We could start by you telling us a little bit about yourself and your background.
okay, yeah. So my name is Robert Woods. I transitioned out of the Air Force in 2016. I was in the Air Force as a dental technician for about 5 years. I really liked it, but I spent the entire time in Columbus, Mississippi at Columbus Air Force Base. And, I had my fiance, she was actually located in New York City. So the whole 5 year period, I was like, I need to figure out how I can get to New York. So, I was fortunate enough and blessed enough to get accepted into Fordham's, one of Fordham's master's programs for investor relations.
Congratulations.
And yeah, and then following that, of course, I had a couple of internships that really worked out well. And I eventually landed another opportunity in grad school at Columbia for real estate development master's program. And, now I'm working for one of what I would say one of the most exciting recruiting companies, Mathison, which we actually focus on underrepresented communities. So veterans, people from the LGBT community, as well as people of color. And, that's kind of our specialty. And I think they essentially brought me on to help with the veteran hiring efforts. And really excited to talk a little bit about that and, just add value wherever I can.
Okay, sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
To get started on that, how would you advise anybody who's interested in employment with, did you say Matthias?
Oh, it's called Mathison.
Mathis. How would you recommend to anybody interested in Mathis to go about pursuing and approaching a position there, especially now that's so different to interact with individuals without a face-to-face opportunity?
Honestly, I would just say, reach out to people on LinkedIn. I feel like that's the most accessible reservoir of, potential talent, potential opportunities there. And most of all, be yourself on the platform because, I think far too often, not even often, but a lot of times people don't necessarily know exactly who you are. Um, online, and it's good to put a really good representation of yourself online. But also, when you reach out to people and have these genuine conversations, just do your best to just really be yourself. And honestly, don't be afraid to say that you don't know something because I think one of the worst things is when people try to, make it seem like they have much more experience than they do, then they end up at the job and you don't necessarily fit the requirements. That's kind of like the worst thing ever. Yeah.
On that with being yourself, how would you suggest to somebody being able to translate their skills with what they did in the military? Sometimes it's a little bit harder to find the right verbiage for what you did then and into translating it to what you want to do now.
To be honest, I would say a lot of that has to do with introspection, figuring out who you are, what you bring to the table, because whatever you made you great in the military, that's going to that's what's going to make you great in the civilian sector in whatever job that you're working in. And when from the military, that we come into any organization having experience with some of the best organizational platforms ever, and that alone is valuable to any organization. But being able to articulate that value, I think it really has to do with numbers. So in terms of the things that you've worked with, like try to pull some numbers from your EPRs or your things like that. Talk about all of the awards that you won. Don't be afraid to talk about those things, because all of the ways that they used to stratify us in the military, of course they do that here too in the civilian sector. So don't shy away from that. And then try to scour the internet for all of the resources that are online in terms of the specific job you want. After you figure out who you are, go after exactly what you want, because people really gravitate toward people that know where they're going. And then they figure out, okay, this person's not going to waste my time.
Yeah. Okay.
So I think that what'd you say?
It's going to seem like someone of value.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody that's passionate about, let's just say finance. Someone that's passionate about finance, it's going to show, it's going to show in all of the things that you talk about, whether it's, books that you're reading, or, daily publications that you're involved with. All of those things are going to show in your conversations with people. And I think that's what's going to make you stand out.
Okay. So to put it in other words, it would be just best to show your best self forward to who you want to be, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then the next thing is, always ask if they have another person that they think would be good to speak with. Because you want to stack the deck in your favor. So get as much momentum as you possibly can.
Okay. How would you advise approaching that? Asking for another individual to speak with? That's a new concept to me. I've never heard of that.
Well, I think you should try to read the room a little bit.
Okay.
If for instance, if you had a really good conversation with someone, like I had, like within the past few weeks, I've had really good conversations with Steven and Nicole, and I think that's part of the reason why we're talking today. So at the end of the conversation, if you know that there's a lot of some chemistry there, some synergies, don't be ashamed. Don't be bashful about saying, are there any other people like you that might be interested in talking to somebody like me? Because I would really, really appreciate that. And I think that kind of
like single out your interest in the individual that you feel you best click with.
Absolutely. People that are from your hometown, from the similar background, anything that you could possibly think of, try to talk to those people.
Understand. Good advice. Really good advice. Anybody have any questions as we moving on, or?
I think Matthias has some questions because he has all these Post-it notes back there. He's working on something. He's plotting, scheming.
Plotted this out for a while.
my thoughts organized. It's
Hey Robert, it's Matt. Thanks for joining us today.
Good of course.
Again. What advice? I think you're exactly right. Somebody that knows what they want to do, that really shows through and is something that is really important for an employer to look at. But what if a veteran is trying to make a transition from one career in the military, that they did something that they don't necessarily want to do in the civilian world? They're not really sure what they want to do. They're uncertain about the whole list of job opportunities that are available. It's hard to put their finger on one thing. What would be your advice to them as they're working through that challenge? That seems to be a common theme for vets.
Well, the first thing I would say is, like, just to go back to that introspection piece, think about who you are. Like, for instance, when I thought about finance for me, I thought, okay, I don't necessarily want to work 17 hours a day for the next 5 or 6 years. Cause I'm, getting up there in age, and I'm like, not me. I kind of want a family and all that kind of stuff. But I figured that finance in the HR space was cool for me because, the lifestyle is a little bit different. But, just to your point, introspection, figuring out who you are and what you want to do. But then find where the door is cracked. And to me, I would say that's the internship opportunities and the entry to mid-level opportunities. I know a lot of times guys that were NCOs or officers might think, hey, an internship, apprenticeship. Oh no, not me. I led millions of dollars worth of programs. A lot of times people aren't willing to so to speak, step down a little bit. But I would say, in order to be able to show your true value, look at where the door is cracked. And to me, that is all those internship and apprenticeship programs. For example, like with me, one of my first big jobs was at Guggenheim Partners, where I got an internship opportunity that was supposed to be 3 months, and it turned into about a year-long opportunity, primarily because they said, well, nobody really applied to the diversity and inclusion group. Nobody does that. Why? And then they met me, and then they said, oh, let's bring them on. So I think that was just one of the key things about, just figuring out who you are and where you want to go.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
No problem.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Robert, Stephen. Curious
Hey,
if you had
Stephen.
any good tips for our student vets out there about translating their military experience into civilian terminology, especially when they're looking for these internships and entry-level jobs.
I would say try to speak to the leadership experience that you had and the impact. So, for example, if you led a team of 4 people, try to speak to that experience and quantify that on your resume. For example, like I worked in the dental clinic, and there's millions of dollars worth of equipment, radiology, all this kind of stuff. Try to speak to that, and then when it comes to the things that you managed, make it palatable. Words like project management is kind of a buzzword, but everybody here has project management experience. If you spent more than a couple of months in the military, somebody's throwing something in your lap to say, hey, here, figure it out. Well, that's a project that you managed. So, milk that for what it's worth. And, I think for me, that's one of the biggest ones, like the project management experience, especially when it comes to entry-level work.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point, Robert, about the project management part.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Robert, I have a question.
Hey, Nicole.
Hi. For our student vets and our student veteran community who's looking to get in the tech field, what do you think from a recruiter perspective are the most important certifications they should have or classes they should take just to prepare themselves to really enter that field and be marketable besides, using their veteran experience?
That's a great question. So I've worked a little bit with companies that are, pretty much every single tech company, and there are a lot out there, every single tech company is looking for software engineers. So what I would personally say is if you have any eligibility left in your GI Bill, go to one of those programs. I personally suggest General Assembly because they have really good they have a really good program, and you can use your GI Bill. But there's also programs out there that that don't require GI Bill or anything like that are free. But I personally, I just recommend General Assembly. And also, if you have a I'm sorry, the name of it is escaping me, but there's a platform out there that you can basically have your tech resume out there. So trying to think of the name of it, but it's essentially like the LinkedIn of tech. So you can basically, if you've created an app before, you can put that app on the specific platform and it'll kind of list out that resume. Does anybody know what that is? I haven't worked in software engineers in a minute. All right. Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, Nicole. But yeah, I would definitely say General Assembly would be a good place to start.
Great, thanks.
So along with the hiring process, if you could spare a few words on resumes, since it's such a huge portion of it, maybe just take on what an ideal resume will look like for a starting position or internship position.
For an internship position, I would say try to call out all of the ways that you've been able to be a self-starter. I know that's kind of a buzzword, but initiative is really a key to someone saying, okay, I trust them with opportunities or a responsibility when they step into my organization. Because at the end of the day, hiring managers, they really want to continue to grow the business. And if they don't grow the business with high quality individuals, they their jobs are in jeopardy. So in short, they want to keep their jobs. So, it's really good to show initiative. For example, you're the VP of Fordham RamVets. That's an incredibly good look. And I think those are, personally as a recruiter, that's something that I look at to say, all right, this guy's legit. Let me submit him. And just as a point of reference, recruiters, they might take about 10 seconds to scan a resume. And, that's kind of unfortunate, because we spend so much time, focusing on every single detail of our resume. But if there's one thing wrong with it, it's not worth their time. But if it really looks good, then it is worth that 10 seconds. And you take another minute to take another look. And that's typically what I do. And if I see Fordham, I stop completely. I stop what I'm doing. So that's kind of my take on it.
Okay. Sounds pretty good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Along that line, then, how do you think the resume should be formatted? Do you like resumes with the summary statements, more than one page, just one page? What kind of key things should we think about when we're formatting our resumes?
I like a really concise couple of sentences at the top of the resume, especially if a person is entry level, to give me a snapshot of what they've done, but also what they're looking to do. What I really, really love is when a person has like the ideal vision of their future kind of mapped out. And I know not everybody is going to have that, but if you do and you kind of position yourself for that, that's great. In terms of the formatting, I think it's across the board. Some people like those colorful resumes, and some people really just want to see bullets with dollar signs and percentage this time. So I think it's definitely subjective, and it depends. Especially on the role. But in terms of formatting, I would just say, have a few people look at it to get a few different perspectives, and don't have any misspellings, because that's a killer.
Spell your name right.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So Robert, I got a follow-up question. You talked about taking advantage of little toeholds, a little crack in the door, if you will. And that seems to be great advice. But you also mentioned that, there's also a perception about what we did in the military and the responsibility that we had and how to adjust that to that level of entry. Can you talk a little bit about, adjusting to an entry-level job or taking an entry-level job, and what the projection is that's perhaps different for veterans than the typical applicant, and how long a veteran might need to stay in an entry-level position before they get to where, or headed in the right direction to where they really want to be or feel like they need to be when they start out?
I think that's a really good question. I think a lot of it has to do with how the veteran positions themselves in the way we articulate our story in the beginning. For instance, if we want to go work at Bank of America, it would be a really good idea to say, I don't necessarily have finance experience, but here are the areas where I show, financial competencies, or in the tech space, here are the areas where I've led programs in tech. I was just for example, for me, I was like the person that was in charge of the hardware in the office, very, very, very tiny role. But I knew that when I got out, I wanted to do something that wasn't dental tech. So, I kind of latched onto that, and it brought me to like the next opportunity. But I would just say, just try to articulate your level of interest with any little piece, anything that you could find from your background that relates to what you want to do next. Because I think that's really important. That shows vision, and that shows the fact that you care about what you're doing next. Like, for instance, Matthias has all these Post-it notes. I know he's a planner, so like things like that.
Thank you.
For sure.
Is there anything that you frequently see veterans do that we should absolutely avoid doing? Like some common mistakes that we may think it's a good idea, but it's definitely not a good idea.
I personally haven't. I do think sometimes, yeah, honestly, that's such a good question that I'm, because some people like hearing about certain things that other people don't, because I've been in rooms where somebody will talk, in graphic detail about things they probably shouldn't, in terms of like being overseas and stuff like that, and things, and that might not be the best place to talk about. Like the office setting might not be the best place to talk about like your weapons and things like that, but I do think you should just try to read the room. If a person is inquisitive about your experience and your experience with an M16, okay, talk all about that. But if they're not, just kind of assume that they don't necessarily want to hear it, and just try to play within those bounds. I think that's the best thing I can say there. It's a great question. Hey, Diego, do you have any more questions for me? I did want to see like.
I think maybe just to close up, considering the shift that we're going through, that everything seems to be electronic, maybe any advice in regards to appearance and how to present yourself through this virtual world that we have now. I mean, it should be granted that, professional, a button down, like Matt looks amazing right now. The whole beard might not be the best look for an interview, but maybe someone needs to hear what someone like you has to say about that.
I do think perception is key sometimes, but I think it depends on the person, whoever you're interviewing with. And if that's you, then don't feel any way about presenting as that person. Because, for instance, if a person just like didn't like people that had glasses, for instance, that's kind of ridiculous, right? But like if right, you know what I'm saying. So if that's who you are, that's just you. So that's kind of what I would say there. Right. But as far as but you also have to recognize the norms in different industries too. Like for when I had my I did have a few interviews with Bank of America, and plenty of guys told me, hey man, you need to shave that, you need to shave your beard, and you have your suit and everything, but you never know what what people might, how people might perceive you. So just be mindful of where you're going and who you would like to project as, at least at the very least in your LinkedIn picture.
Understood. I got the percent.
Yeah.
Okay. Would you advise someone who's applying to a job, especially through a virtual interview, to ask what they're expected to look like prior to the interview, or just kind of put their best foot forward?
I would say put your best foot forward,
Okay.
And for instance, if it's Facebook, you might be okay with like a nice sweatshirt, a nice tee. But if it's JP Morgan, they might expect something a little bit different.
Definitely wear pants.
At least from here, You can have the shorts on under here. Nobody knows, right? Yeah.
I did see we have somebody join in just now. I'm not sure if anybody else has any questions. Last 2 seconds they want to say.
Yeah, I didn't want to end it too. I wanted to ask what people have planned for their future too. Like, I know Steven just transitioned into his big role with Fordham, and Nicole is in our MBA program. Want to hear a little bit more about what everybody else is doing and the plans for your future right now.
I'm trying to get my feet under me with this whole shift we have going on, seeing if there's any kind of normalcy we go back to, and just trying to plan on from there. Definitely want to stay in the tech field. It's something that I'm interested in. I'm an information systems major, so I want to pursue that. It's a couple of companies that I would ideally like to go for. I don't feel like I'm prepared for them just yet, but once I'm at that point, I'll definitely reach out to them.
That's awesome. And what year are you in?
I'm a junior.
Junior, okay. Nice.
Graduating spring 2021.
Nice. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Exciting times, man.
Oh, it was an interesting time to get out. I actually just got out in August.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I've been in for a trip. Yeah, it's been interesting.
Whoa. That's really cool. Well, I wish you the best with that. And if there's anything I can do to help, like please let me know.
Mr. Robert, I appreciate that.
For sure.
So I'm trying to get into the tech industry too, which is a pivot for me. I was a paramedic for 8 years, then in the Marine Corps for 4. I'm going back to school mainly. Right now I'm pursuing a second bachelor's degree because I have like no idea what to do in the computer science world, just because it's a complete different career for me. But ideally, I was looking at going into cybersecurity, so I'm looking at maybe doing a master's after I finish the second bachelor's and have a better basic understanding of that field.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Are you guys in the LinkedIn groups, like the LinkedIn tech groups and stuff like that?
I actually just started on LinkedIn, so it's not a very impressive account.
Nice. So I have a LinkedIn. I've just been avoiding joining anything recently because of the cybersecurity people I've been talking to. They're like, you shouldn't have a LinkedIn. So I've gotten that from a few people in the cybersecurity field.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's really cool.
So yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to manage what I already have posted. So
that's awesome. That's awesome.
Robert, what LinkedIn cybersecurity tech groups do you recommend then, the ones that you belong to, that would be useful for people to join?
Well, I was actually talking about the general veteran groups. There's a veteran group with about 250,000 people. I can actually send you the link as well to share if you like. But that's the main one because I kind of moved away from the tech space a few years ago. But yeah, I'm not sure about the tech groups. But if that is your affinity group, then that's kind of where you'd like to you should want to focus.
It's just a search away.
Yeah, just a Google search away.
Right.
And I'm looking to get into communications and publications.
That's awesome. So like PR specifically, or do you also want to do like the strategy side of marketing?
I have more experience probably in public relations. I think further down the road, I would like to do something with marketing and design. I just don't have a lot of professional experience there, but I really thoroughly enjoy mass communications and yeah, I guess PR makes sense.
That's cool. Why do you thoroughly enjoy PR?
I've been working for this organization for the SVAF for about 3 years, and I was doing communications. We used to have a very small team, so I was really busy with the social media promotion, and then I became a vice president, so I was also still helping with communications, and then I became president, which or got really into the event planning, and I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed setting up spaces for people to like learn and grow. I loved listening to feedback and giving people resources that they wanted. I really liked working with a team to just build events and talk about it and promote, direct the aesthetic of the organization. Yeah, I really found a niche there.
That's awesome. It sounds like you found it early too. That's great. And that's like, and I know you joined the call a little bit later, but that's kind of exactly what I look for. If a person can just riff on the things that they like and the things that they're interested in, something goes off in my head, and I'm like, okay, this is great. So it's fantastic. Nicholas.
Yes, sir.
How's it going?
I'm good. Sorry, I'm just chilling with the long name. It's Christopoulos, by the way.
Christopoulos. Nice.
No, I'm listening to a lot of what you guys say. It's pretty good. I actually had one question. So I guess everyone does like resume workshops and interview workshops or whatever. One thing I kept seeing was like, I don't know, we get resumes for even the Fordham veterans, right? And
right.
I've probably been guilty of it myself, but people will write the most insane things for a very not like average thing that you did, but you know what I mean? Like you dress
right.
it up, right? You're not just a basket weaver. You're like a industrial, whatever, all this stuff. And I feel like how much does that weigh against you with people reading your stuff and be like, okay, this is, you're just blowing smoke. You know what I mean?
Well, I think to a certain extent that's needed, especially if you're really trying to make that transition, because sometimes it feels like you're trying to steer a wheel when there's no oil you know what I'm saying? And it's so hard to get to that next phase in your life. So you have to do that. And honestly, one of the best things to happen in that regard is when a person sees that random line in your resume and they go, what does that mean? And then that gives you an opportunity to give them that answer of, oh, I actually did this incredibly important thing for my team in the military. And they write that down.
Yeah. All right.
That
could be good, I guess.
Yeah, it could be good, but if you don't have an explanation for it, it could set you up for failure.
Yeah. All right. Absolutely. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. You answered a lot of really good questions today. I've just been hanging in the background listening.
Oh, of course, no problem.
I did have one more question, Robert, that I just thought of. Let's say there's a particular individual interested in a specific position at a specific company. How would you advise someone to create an opportunity so that they're able to reach that specific goal?
Okay, so I'll give you my recommendation on it, my personal recommendation. It's not everybody's, but is anybody here in like a fraternity or anything like that? Sorority?
No, we don't have those at Fordham.
Oh man.
I was at the University of Pittsburgh. I was in a fraternity.
Okay. Yeah, and we're all part of different organizations, even the military. That's like the biggest. But what I would say is treat it as if you, man, I don't want to, okay, so I don't want to say stalk a person, but, do deep research, deep dive and research on specific people in that specific office and that company. And the people that that start to, maybe accept your LinkedIn request or, respond to different things you're saying online, try to get a relationship with that person. Especially if they're in like a VP level or manager level role, try to just talk to those people just for exploratory conversations. I feel like that's a really important word, exploratory conversations, and try to express the fact that you're not going to waste their time on the call, and that it's your goal, like part of your life's mission and purpose is to do X, Y, Z, because I think that goes a long way. Because for me personally, if someone says, Robert, I've been trying to become a recruiter for the last 3 years, but I haven't been able to speak to anybody in the recruiting space. Do you have 10, 15 minutes, maybe a half an hour? Yes, you do. Of course. That has not happened yet, but just, if that ever happened, that's kind of how I would respond to that. And also there's one key thing here as well. A lot of times when I speak to my friends from the military about, the opportunities that they're walking into right now, if there's a limited amount of opportunities, I usually try to diagnose it. And I say, okay, so what have you been doing? You've been applying to jobs? Yeah, I've been applying to jobs. Okay. How many jobs did you apply for this week? I mean, like 3 or 4. Cool. Okay. That number needs to be 30 to 40 every single week. And, and I think the same thing goes for reach outs, so outreach. If you, of course, if you reach out to the CEO of a business, they might not reply. But if you reach out to, let's just say within a month's time, if you reach out to 200 executive level people asking specific pointed questions, and let's just say you reach out to 5 per day for a month or so, I think it would be difficult for you to not have some sort of response and plan going forward after that. I think, that would definitely allow you to create serendipity for yourself. And momentum too. Did I answer that question?
Yes, you did very well, actually. Good, nice big words. Exploring, identity, not bad. Okay, I like
Yeah,
that.
Robert, you mentioned something earlier too, about, hey, if it's a Fordham student, that's going to catch my eye. So, what can you talk to how using that alumni network is also really beneficial to job exploration?
Yeah, definitely. And, for me, I think that's, I don't want to say everything, but for me, it's been like 90%, because Fordham holds a really, really strong, a really good, it has a really good place in people's hearts, especially since you have to grind it out there, and so the network really spans through multiple decades. So anytime you reach out to somebody from Fordham, they're going to have some sort of emotional response to what you're saying. And even if they don't respond directly to you, they might respond months later. They literally might respond months later. But I think it's always good to put that out there. And the best thing to do is to pay it forward when it happens, when it happens to you. So that's kind of what I would say there. And just a quick story. Like when I was at Guggenheim Partners, there was somebody named Owen Daly. He happened to be at the Guggenheim. He happened to do the Veterans Transition Assistance Program at Guggenheim Partners. He eventually did the Veterans Associate Program at Bank of America. And when he saw me at Guggenheim Partners, he immediately said, "Oh, Fordham? Hey, let's talk. Let's talk next week. I think I might have something for you. And I eventually made it to like the final rounds for the veteran program at Bank of America. But you know, Fordham. Long story short, Fordham goes a long way, especially in the New York City market specifically.
Thanks. It's great.
For sure.
Mhm.
Hey, Robert, I had one more question. So we talked a lot about tips for success prior to getting that internship or full-time job offer, but what about for our student vets who, you know, on average are a little older than your stereotypical internship? How do you think that plays to our advantage in the workplace when you're talking to people most likely your own age, you know, but who have been in that civilian workforce that much longer? How do you think is a good, you know, I guess a good tip to use that to our advantage?
And so no experience in the civilian workforce, or some experience.
Yeah, I'd say a student vet graduating Fordham starts their new full-time job. You know, how do you think that plays to their advantage, being kind of the same maturity level and
Mm.
whatnot?
I think it definitely plays to your advantage, especially you know, if you're let's say in your mid to late 20s, you probably were an NCO in the military at least, and even then you were probably a senior level junior enlisted person. So the level of responsibility you have there is pretty is not standard at all. You know, you have an incredibly unique point of view and skill set. I think the main thing though is whatever job you're going for, just make sure you have like one or two minimal skill sets. For example, I keep going back to finance. My apologies, guys. But for example, in finance, they have these things like you have to be good at Excel eventually, and like in tech, you want at least some sort of interest in one of the certifications, like a cyber certification. I think that would go a long way. Courses that you've taken, because personally, I personally hate taking those certification courses. It's like so brutal. But if you can show some sort of interest or specialty, I think that gives the hiring manager a little bit more confidence about your level of seriousness about the opportunity.
Thanks, Robert.
Yeah, you're welcome. And there is one thing I wanted to talk about too. I know we have a few minutes left. Have you guys heard of the on-the-job training programs?
Yes. I've heard the Microsoft version of it. I was still in the Marine Corps when I heard about that one.
Okay. Somebody else?
You to me.
Oh, okay. And essentially, you know, I guess I can talk a little bit about like what I'm trying to do with Mathison and building out the veteran programs. Like, you know, this is a great group to talk to, and I really appreciate you guys for being here. It's one of the things I would really like to do is just help veterans that I know that know me, just reach out to other businesses that you might be interested in and to see if they want to start maybe a veteran program or continue the veteran program at Microsoft, and how we can support that. And I think that's one of the things. But in terms of the on-the-job training thing, it basically allows you to use your GI Bill to make that step into kind of an internship or apprenticeship opportunity. And it basically allows you to like make an extra 19 to 30 grand. You know, if you use your GI Bill in that way. Of course, you don't have to do that. I know a lot of people don't necessarily want to use their GI Bill for things like that, but you know, if you're a money centric person, or if you have a family or something like that, that might be huge for you. So just wanted to put that out there. If anybody's ever interested, feel free to let me know.
You said that was called the on the job program? Is that the
On the job Yeah, on the job training programs. Yeah, definitely trying to get that started at Mathison. And if you haven't heard of it, like there are companies that are doing it right now. There's one called Shift. The company's called Shift. They're out in California primarily, and they've done it with companies like Uber and things like that, Uber and Lyft. So just another little nugget, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. Roll
Yeah,
amounts
for
to
sure.
out.
Yeah, everybody's looking for an extra dollar or two, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Well,
Robert?
yeah, I'm sorry. I'm off. Sorry, I stole it. Sorry. I just want to thank you, Diego, and Nicole and Steven and Matthew for, facilitating this and helping me be a part of this. It's really cool to come back and talk to, some people from Fordham. It's awesome.
We really appreciate your time and you coming out here to speak to us and share this information with us. It's definitely something that's going to help a lot of people out.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My pleasure, honestly.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Thanks, Nicole, for her leadership. And thanks, Robert, for you coming back and talking to us. So it's nice to know that we've got veteran alumni that are looking out for Fordham vets. And that's such a valuable thing to have, and you exemplify that. So thanks so much.
I appreciate that, Matthew. Seriously. Thanks.